wanted to do was to remind people that I was disabled, and that sign seemed the most glaring example of what I couldn't do. But my mom and dad offered a different perspective. They told me that it wasn't a sign for the disabled. Instead, it was an announcement. An announcement, a celebration that people were coming to Marlee's neighborhood. Though, as I said, I initially saw the sign that said, "You better slow down because there's a deaf girl who lives here." They said to look at the sign in a different way. Instead, it said, "Hi, I'm Marlee. Want to stop by? I'll be your best friend." What a great way to take the dis out of disability. Besides, they told me, what other kid in the neighborhood had their own sign? Eventually, that sign became one of the defining moments of my life, and it was why I used it as the title for my first novel for children, Deaf Child Crossing, about a young girl who happens to be deaf, dealing with the ups and downs of growing up in Chicago. But, as it turned out, there were two sides to the story about the sign. It wasn't until I was writing a book that I got my dad to admit that he had another motive for putting up the sign. You see, when people needed to come to our house, my dad would simply tell them, "Just drive around until you see the big yellow deaf child sign, and then you'll find their house." No one ever got lost coming to our house. This can-do spirit, this idea that I could do anything that I set my mind to, despite being deaf, flowed freely from my family. And it was my mother who encouraged me to be an actor because she saw it as the perfect outlet for her daughter, who was the loudest person she ever met, and who loved to sit down with a Judy Blume book in her hand or sit in front of the bathroom mirror performing stories and fantastic characters. In my world of books and in my world of mirrors, there were no barriers. Because in books, I would never have to struggle to hear the printed word, and in my bathroom mirror, everyone signed perfectly. Well, eventually, my mother guided me to a more productive outlet, and that was a small community theater just down the road from our house that served both deaf and hearing children. And I was 7 years old when my mom brought me there, and as soon as I walked in, they were putting together a production of The Wizard of Oz, and right then and right there, I told them I was the only person to play the part of Dorothy, and they were looking right at me. Needless to say, I got the part. By the time I was 13, I had my feet firmly planted in the world of community theater, and I had dreams of making it big in Hollywood. So it was no surprise to my mother when an actor by the name of Henry Winkler came to visit the theater to watch the company perform. Now, some of you might be too young to know who Henry Winkler was, but at one time, he was the most famous person in America, more than even President Carter, I have to say. So, and it was on that TV show called Happy Days, he played the role of the Fonz. Anyway, when I found out that Henry was visiting our theater, I was the first to go right up to him and said, "Hi, I'm Marlee, and I want to be famous in Hollywood just like you." I'm sure some might have questioned my motives, particularly because there were no real deaf actors in Hollywood at that time. And in fact, my mother took Henry aside and told him not to encourage me too much because she didn't want me to be disappointed in the end. But Henry refused to take no for an answer. Because Henry grew up with his own barriers. As a child, he had difficulty reading, and his teachers and even his parents told him he was stupid. And it wasn't until many years later, when his son was diagnosed as dyslexic, that Henry found out that he was dyslexic too. But despite what people told Henry what he couldn't do, he followed his heart and pursued his dreams. And in the end, Henry became one of America's most revered actors. So, there was Henry, listening to my mother in his polite Henry Winkler way, and when she was done, he turned around, knelt down, looked me straight in the eye and said, just like Fonzie, "Marlee, sweetheart, you can be whatever you want to be. Just follow your heart and your dreams will come true."